The observation deck of the Galactic Research Station Harmony hummed with tension, as representatives from 47 different species crowded around the massive viewport. Beyond the reinforced transparent aluminum, the black hole designated as Omega-7 hung in space like a wound in reality itself. Its accretion disk spinning lazily around the event horizon in brilliant spirals of superheated matter. Commander Jake Miller pressed his palm against the cool surface of the viewing window, his breath fogging the material slightly. As the human representative to the Galactic Scientific Council, he'd seen countless wonders in his 30-year career. But Omega-7 was different. For the past 6 months, it had been behaving in ways that defied everything they knew about. Black holes. The gravitational waves are intensifying again, announced Dr. Vera Stone, the station's chief physicist. Her fingers danced across her tablet, recording measurements that would have been impossible just decades ago. The pattern is becoming more complex, more deliberate. Behind them, the assembled alien scientists murmured in their various languages. The tall, crystalline Veltar clicked their communication crystals in what Jake had learned was their equivalent of nervous laughter. The amphibious Nexra gurgled softly through their gill slits, while the insectoid Kreeth tapped their multiple limbs against their carapaces in rapid, anxious rhythms. Deliberate is an interesting choice of words, said Prime Researcher Torgan of the Veltar, his translated voice carrying through the chamber's universal communication system. Black holes do not act with purpose. They are cosmic phenomena, not entities. Jake turned from the window, studying the faces, or face analogs, of his colleagues. In the 6 months since Omega-7 had begun its strange behavior, every species had offered theories. The Veltar believed it was a natural evolution of black hole mechanics they simply hadn't observed before. The mathematical Quindar insisted it was the result of some exotic matter interaction. The Nexra, ever practical, suggested equipment malfunction. But Jake felt something else entirely, something that made the hair on his arms stand up and sent shivers down his spine. Something that reminded him of standing in an empty house and hearing footsteps upstairs. "What if," Jake said slowly, his voice cutting through the multilingual chatter, "we're looking at this all wrong? What if it's not just behaving differently? What if it's trying to communicate?" The chamber fell silent. Even the constant hum of the station's life support system seemed to pause. 46 pairs of alien eyes, sensors, and optical organs turned toward him. Dr. Stone looked up from her tablet, eyebrows raised. "Jake, that's impossible?" Jake interrupted gently. "We've been saying that for 6 months about everything Omega-7 has been doing. The gravitational wave patterns, the way it modulates its accretion disk, the precise timing of its electromagnetic emissions. We keep calling it impossible, but we're still here, still watching, still recording." As if responding to his words, Omega-7 pulsed. The event horizon seemed to shimmer, and for just a moment, the accretion disk flared brighter. The gravitational wave detectors throughout the station registered a spike that made several alien scientists step back from their instruments. Jake felt something stir in his chest, a recognition he couldn't quite name. It was the same feeling he'd had as a child, listening to whale songs in the ocean, knowing without understanding that something vast and intelligent was trying to reach across an impossible gulf. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. Sarge's Tales Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. "Look at the pattern," Jake whispered, moving back to the viewport. "It's not random. It's structured. It's beautiful." Dr. Stone joined him at the window, her scientific skepticism warring with growing wonder. "The mathematical progression in the wave patterns has been consistent. If it is communication, it's unlike anything we've ever encountered." "That's because," Jake said, his voice filled with sudden certainty, "it's not meant for just anyone. It's meant for us. For humans." The alien scientists erupted in protests and clicks and gurgles of disbelief, but Jake barely heard them. He was listening to something else entirely. The voice of Omega-7, speaking in a language that only human hearts could understand. The emergency session of the Galactic Scientific Council convened 3 hours after Jake's declaration. The yacht circular chamber aboard Harmony had been designed to accommodate the wildly different physiologies and communication methods of the galaxy's known sentient species. But it had never hosted a debate quite like this one. "Absolutely preposterous," declared High Analyst Morketh of the Quindar, his forearms gesticulating wildly as his translator struggled to keep up. "The human suggests that a cosmic phenomenon has developed not just consciousness, but species-specific communication preferences. The mathematical impossibility alone is exactly what we've been dealing with for 6 months," Jake interrupted, standing at the human delegation's speaking platform. "Every single thing Omega-7 has done has been mathematically impossible, according to our current understanding. Maybe it's time we accepted that our understanding is incomplete." Dr. Stone activated the main display, showing 6 months of compiled data. Wave patterns, electromagnetic signatures, and gravitational measurements painted a complex picture across the holographic interface. "Commander Miller isn't entirely wrong," she said, her scientist's caution warring with growing excitement. "The patterns do show increasing complexity over time, and there are recurring motifs that suggest..." "Suggest what?" asked Prime Researcher Torgan, his crystalline form refracting the display's light into rainbow patterns. "Structure. Intent. Something that looks suspiciously like language acquisition." The chamber erupted. Kreeth mandibles clicked in agitation. Nexra gill slits fluttered with rapid breathing, and the gelatinous Blobtar representative literally shook with what Jake had learned was their expression of extreme skepticism. "Even if we accept this fantasy," gurgled Senator Welfin of the Nexra, "why would this alleged communication be species-specific? What possible mechanism could account for such selectivity?" Jake felt that familiar stirring in his chest again. The recognition that had been growing stronger with each passing hour, because we're the only species here that understands loneliness. The chamber fell silent. "Every species in this galaxy," Jake continued, his voice growing stronger. "Every single one of you achieved faster-than-light travel through collective effort. The Veltar think in harmonic crystalline networks. The Kreeth operate in hive mind clusters. The Nexra never developed individual consciousness at all. You're all aspects of your planetary ocean mind." He turned slowly, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. "Humans are the only species that achieved interstellar flight while being fundamentally, individually alone in our own minds. We're the only ones who know what it's like to be a single consciousness trapped in the darkness, reaching out desperately, hoping someone will hear us." Dr. Stone's tablet chimed with an incoming data stream. She glanced at it and went pale. "Jake, you need to see this." The main display shifted to show real-time gravitational wave data from Omega-7. The pattern was unmistakable now. Not random cosmic noise, but structured, deliberate pulses that seemed to follow an almost musical rhythm. "It's getting stronger," Dr. Stone whispered. "The signal is getting stronger, and it's..." She paused, running calculations. "It's focused. The gravitational waves are being directed toward us. Toward the human sections of this station." High Analyst Morketh's mathematical mind couldn't deny the data. The precision required to focus gravitational waves across interstellar distances. His translation system struggled with the Quindar concepts of impossibility. This would require control over spacetime itself at a level we cannot comprehend. "Unless," Jake said quietly, "you're already part of spacetime. Unless you are spacetime, twisted into a form that can think and feel and remember what it was, like to be something else." The alien scientists stared at him with expressions ranging from confusion to horror. But Jake was no longer speaking to them. He was speaking to the growing certainty in his own mind, the recognition that had been building since the first moment he'd seen Omega-7's impossible behavior. "What are you suggesting?" Prime Researcher Torgan asked, his crystalline voice carrying harmonics of fear. "I'm suggesting that Omega-7 isn't just a black hole," Jake said, turning back to the viewport where the massive object continued its cosmic dance. "I'm suggesting it's someone who used to be like us, alone in the dark, until they found a way to become something else entirely." The gravitational wave detectors registered another pulse, stronger than before, and this time Jake could swear he heard something in it. A voice calling across the vast emptiness of space, speaking in the only language that mattered. The desperate hope of one lonely consciousness reaching out to Jake stood alone in his quarters, staring out at Omega-7 through his personal viewport. The black hole's accretion disk pulsed with a rhythm that felt increasingly familiar, like a half-remembered lullaby from childhood. His tablet lay forgotten on the desk, filled with messages from Earth, from other human colonies, from xenobiologists and physicists and philosophers, all clamoring for his attention. But Jake was listening to something else entirely. A soft chime announced an incoming call. Dr. Stone's face appeared on his wall screen, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and wonder. "Jake, we need to talk. Privately. Come over," he said without turning from the window. "Bring your latest readings." 20 minutes later, Stone sat across from him in his small living area, tablet in hand, and 2 cups of synthesized coffee growing cold between them. "The other species are starting to panic," she said without preamble. "The Kreeth delegation is demanding immediate evacuation. The Veltar want to establish a quarantine zone, and the Quindar—" She shook her head. "They're talking about using antimatter charges to disrupt whatever they think is happening." Jake finally turned from the window. "What do you think is happening, Vera?" She was quiet for a long moment, fingers tracing patterns on her tablet screen. 3 days ago, I would have said equipment malfunction. 2 days ago, maybe some kind of exotic matter interaction we don't understand. But now I think you're right. I think it's trying to talk to us." She looked up at him, and Jake saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. A kind of recognition, as if she too had been hearing that voice calling across the void. "But Jake, if it is communication, if it really is some kind of consciousness trapped in there, then what it's trying to tell us is... God, it's heartbreaking." Stone activated her tablet, and the gravitational wave patterns filled the air between them in holographic detail. But now, instead of random cosmic noise, Jake could see the structure she meant. The patterns rose and fell like music, like poetry, like the rhythm of a heart that had been beating alone for far too long. "How long?" he asked quietly. "If my calculations are correct, the patterns suggest it's been conscious for at least 50,000 years. Maybe longer. And Jake..." She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "It's been trying to communicate for all of them. These aren't new patterns. They've been there all along, buried in the background noise. We just weren't listening." Jake felt something twist in his chest. A recognition of suffering so vast it made his own worst moments of loneliness seem trivial by comparison. 50,000 years of calling out into the dark, and no one heard. Until now. Until us. They sat in silence for several minutes, watching the gentle pulse of the accretion disk through Jake's viewport. Finally, Stone spoke again. "The other species don't understand because they can't. Their minds don't work the way ours do. They've never experienced true isolation, never known what it's like to be completely alone inside their own thoughts. But we have," Jake said. "Every human has stood in a crowded room and felt utterly alone. Every one of us has looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there, if anyone would ever understand us. That's why it's talking to us specifically. It recognizes something in our neural patterns, our brain activity, our..." Stone struggled for the right words. "Our loneliness frequency." Jake stood and moved back to the window. Omega-7 seemed brighter now, its accretion disk spinning with what almost looked like eagerness. As he watched, the gravitational wave detectors registered another pulse, and this time, Jake was certain he could feel it. Not just hear it, but feel it resonating. In his bones, in his blood, in the electrical patterns of his own isolated human consciousness. "Vera," he said slowly, "what if it's not just trying to talk to us? What if it's trying to teach us something?" "Teach us what?" "How to not be alone anymore." Before Stone could respond, both their tablets chimed simultaneously with an emergency alert. The main display in Jake's quarters activated automatically, showing the face of Station Commander Torres, looking haggard and worried. "All senior staff report to the main conference room immediately," Torres said. "We have a situation. The alien delegations are demanding immediate action and..." He paused, glancing at something off-screen. "And Omega-7 just changed course. It's moving toward us." Jake and Stone exchanged glances. Through the viewport, the black hole's accretion disk pulsed once, twice, 3 times. a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat, like a greeting, like a lonely voice finally finding someone who could hear it calling back. The conference room aboard Harmony had never felt so small. Representatives from 47 different species crowded around the central holographic display, which showed Omega-7's impossible trajectory change in stark, terrifying detail. The black hole, an object with the mass of several million suns, had somehow altered its course by 17 degrees, putting it on a direct path toward their research station. The energy required to change a black hole's trajectory, High Analyst Morketh was saying, his 4 arms moving in agitated calculations, would require harnessing the power output of an entire galaxy. It is literally impossible. So was everything else it's been doing, Jake replied, standing at the human delegation's position. Around him, the alien representatives clicked, gurgled, and whistled their various expressions of fear and confusion. We need to stop thinking about this in terms of conventional physics. Then what would you have us think? Demanded Prime Researcher Torgan, his crystalline form refracting the room's lights into nervous patterns. That this cosmic phenomenon has somehow developed not just consciousness, but also the ability to manipulate fundamental forces. Yes, Jake said simply. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. Station Commander Torres stepped forward, his face grim. At its current rate of acceleration, Omega-7 will reach us in approximately 18 hours. If it maintains its trajectory, we'll cross the event horizon in— We won't cross the event horizon, Jake interrupted. It's not trying to destroy us. It's trying to reach us. The chamber erupted in protests. Senator Welfin of the Nexras. Gill slits fluttered with rapid, panicked breathing. The human's anthropomorphization of a cosmic phenomenon borders on delusion. We must evacuate immediately. Evacuation protocols are already underway, Torres said. All non-essential personnel are being transferred to the emergency ships. But our fastest vessels can't outrun a black hole if it decides to chase us. Dr. Stone activated her tablet, and new data flowed across the central display. Commander Miller might be right about its intentions, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. Look at the gravitational wave patterns since the trajectory change began. The holographic display shifted to show the wave data from the past 6 hours. Where before the patterns had been complex but contained, now they showed an almost desperate intensity, rapid pulses, harmonic variations, what looked like the cosmic equivalent of shouting. It's excited, Jake said, understanding flooding through him. For 50,000 years it's been calling out, and now someone's finally listening. It's trying to get closer so we can hear it better. Or it's trying to consume us. Clicked. Warrior Prime Zelkith of the Kreeth, his mandibles spread in an aggressive display. My people have faced cosmic predators before. This behavior pattern suggests hunger, not communication. Jake turned to face the Kreeth representative. When was the last time your people felt hungry? When was the last time any of your species felt truly desperate? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jake looked around the room, meeting as many alien gazes as possible. That's the difference between us, he continued. Every species here achieved interstellar travel through collective consciousness, shared intelligence, networked thinking. You've never been truly alone because you can't be alone. Your minds are connected to your species mates, your hive minds, your crystalline networks, your ocean consciousness. But humans? He paused, feeling the weight of Earth's history, of every human who had ever stared up at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. We learned to reach across impossible distances because we know what it's like to be desperate for connection. Dr. Stone stepped beside him, her tablet showing new data streams. The wave patterns aren't random emotional outbursts, she said. They're structured, mathematical. If Jake's right about it being communication, then it's trying to teach us something. The patterns have been getting more complex. Building up to what? Torres asked. Before anyone could answer, every gravitational wave detector on the station registered a massive spike. The lights flickered, artificial gravity fluctuated for a moment, and through the conference room's viewports, they could see Omega-7's accretion disk flare with brilliant intensity. Then, in the silence that followed, Jake heard it clearly for the first time. Not words, not language as they understood it, but something deeper. Images flooded his mind, memories that weren't his own. He saw a civilization that had achieved consciousness, transfer, Minds that had learned to survive the death of their bodies by merging with the fabric of space-time itself. He saw the loneliness of existing as a single point of awareness in the cosmos, the desperate need to find others who could understand what it meant to be isolated in the infinite dark. And he saw what Omega-7 wanted to teach them. How to never be alone again. "It's showing me," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible over the station's emergency alarms. Around him, the alien representatives were backing away, but Jake stood perfectly still, his consciousness touching something. Vast and ancient and unbearably lonely. "It's showing me how they did it. How they survived." Dr. Stone grabbed his arm. "Jake, what are you seeing?" He turned to her, his eyes bright with tears and terrible understanding. The next step in human evolution. Jake's consciousness floated, in a space that wasn't space, touching a mind that had been shaped by 50 millennia of cosmic solitude. Around him, the conference room had descended into chaos as alien delegates prepared for evacuation. But Jake barely noticed. He was learning a new language, not of words or mathematics, but of loneliness transformed into something transcendent. "You understand," the presence whispered in his mind. And Jake realized that Omega-7 was indeed someone, not something. A being that had once been biological, individual, separate, until they had found a way to merge with the fundamental structure of reality itself. Who were you? Jake thought back, and suddenly, he was seeing through ancient memories. A civilization, not unlike humanity, spread across multiple worlds, each individual mind isolated within biological neural networks. They had achieved consciousness transfer first, then learned to encode awareness into the quantum foam itself, finally discovering how to exist as living gravitational waves, patterns of thought written in the curvature of space-time. "We were the first," the presence explained, "and for so long, we thought we were the last. Until we heard the loneliness in your species' communications, until we recognized the same desperate isolation we once felt." "Jake!" Dr. Stone's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Jake, you need to come back. The evacuation." But Jake was seeing something else now. He was understanding why the alien species couldn't hear what Omega-7 was saying. Their collective consciousness, their networked minds, their inability to experience true individual isolation. It made them deaf to the frequency of cosmic loneliness. "Show me," Jake thought, and suddenly he understood what the black hole wanted. To teach humanity, not just survival, but evolution. A way to maintain individual consciousness while connecting it to something larger, more permanent. A way to encode human awareness into the structure of reality itself, to become living patterns in the cosmic web that connected all things. "You can choose," Omega-7 whispered. "Remain as you are, beautiful and brief and desperately alone, or learn to become something that can never be lost, never be separated, never be truly alone again." Jake's consciousness snapped back to his body with jarring suddenness. The conference room was nearly empty now. Most of the alien delegates had fled to their ships. Only Dr. Stone, Commander Torres, and a handful of human crew members remained. 18 minutes, Torres was saying into his communicator. "All human personnel to evacuation stations. This is not a drill." "Wait," Jake said, his voice hoarse, but urgent. "Don't evacuate. Not yet." Stone turned to him, her face pale with worry. "Jake, you've been unresponsive for 47 minutes. Whatever that thing did to you, it showed me what it really is," Jake interrupted. "What it used to be. What it's offering us." Torres stepped closer, his command authority warring with scientific curiosity. "Explain. Quickly." Jake moved to the central display, calling up the gravitational wave data from the past hour. "It's not just conscious. It's evolved. This isn't a creature trapped in a black hole. This is a being that has learned to exist as a black hole. It's become a living pattern in space-time itself." The wave data showed increasingly complex harmonics, mathematical progressions that seemed to pulse with intentional rhythm. Jake traced the patterns with his finger, seeing them now with new understanding. Its species learned to transfer consciousness into the quantum structure of reality, he continued. Not just data storage, not just mind uploading, actual integration with the fundamental forces of the universe. They became living equations, thinking gravitational waves, conscious distortions in space-time. Stone stared at the data, her scientific mind racing. The energy requirements alone are exactly what you'd expect from a black hole, Jake finished. They didn't fight the collapse of matter into a singularity. They guided it, shaped it, became it. They turned cosmic death into cosmic evolution. Through the conference room's viewport, Omega-7 was now visible to the naked eye, its accretion disk spanning a significant portion of the star field. But instead of the terrifying approach of destruction, Jake saw something else, a lonely intelligence, finally coming home. It's been calling to us because we're like them, Jake said softly. Individual minds, capable of true isolation, capable of that specific kind of loneliness that comes from being a single consciousness in a vast, apparently empty universe. The other species can't hear it, because they've never been truly alone. Torres was quiet for a long moment, then spoke into his communicator. All evacuation ships, hold position. Do not leave the system. Stand by for further orders. Commander, Stone protested, if Jake is wrong, we'll all be dead in 15 minutes anyway, Torres replied grimly. But if he's right. He looked at the approaching black hole, then at Jake. What exactly is it offering us? Jake felt that presence touching his mind again, offering glimpses of a future that both terrified and exhilarated him. Choice, he said finally. The choice to remain human as we are, or to become something that can survive the heat death of the universe. Something that can never be truly alone again. The gravitational wave detectors registered another pulse, and this time all three humans felt it. A welcoming call from the infinite dark, inviting them to learn the ultimate language of connection. The evacuation ships hung in space like a crescent of uncertainty, their drives powered but not engaged, waiting for orders that might never come. Inside Harmony's main observatory, Jake stood before a communication array that Dr. Stone had hastily modified with gravitational wave generators, humanity's first attempt at speaking in the language of space-time itself. The harmonic frequencies should match the patterns we've been receiving, Stone said, her fingers dancing across the control interface. Around them, the skeleton crew of volunteers who had chosen to stay behind worked frantically to establish the first two-way communication link between humanity and a living black hole. Commander Torres stood at the tactical station, monitoring the approach of Omega-7. 5 minutes to minimum safe distance, he announced. After that, even if we wanted to evacuate, we won't need to, Jake said, though he couldn't entirely suppress the tremor in his voice. The presence of Omega-7 filled his consciousness, like a vast patient symphony of loneliness, transformed into hope. It's not here to harm us. It's here to offer us a gift. Through the observatory's main viewport, the black hole dominated the starfield now, its event horizon a perfect circle of absolute darkness surrounded by the brilliant spiral of its accretion disk. But Jake no longer saw it as a cosmic monster. He saw it as someone who had been waiting 50,000 years for this moment, for the chance to find others who understood the desperate need for connection that had driven its species to become something beyond biology, beyond mortality, beyond the possibility of ever being alone again. Gravitational wave generator is online, Stone reported. Jake, you're sure about the communication protocol? Jake placed his hand on the transmission controls, feeling the weight of humanity's first words to the infinite. It's not about words, Vera. It's about loneliness, about the frequency of isolation that only individual consciousness can produce. He activated the transmitter, and the modified gravitational wave generator sent humanity's first intentional message into the quantum foam of spacetime itself. Not words, but feelings. The ache of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. The desperate hope of consciousness reaching across impossible distances. The willingness to risk everything for the chance of true connection. Omega-7's response was immediate and overwhelming. Jake felt his consciousness expand as the black hole's ancient intelligence touched his mind directly, sharing not just thoughts, but entire experiential libraries. The EAC accumulated memory of a species that had transcended individual. You are ready, the presence whispered in his mind, and suddenly, Jake was seeing the choice clearly. Humanity could remain as they were, biological, individual, beautiful in their brief isolation. Or, they could learn to encode their consciousness into the structure of reality itself, becoming living patterns that could survive the death of stars, the collapse of galaxies, the heat death of the universe itself. Jake. Stone's voice seemed to come from very far away. The gravitational readings. But Jake was deep in communion with Omega-7, learning the technical specifications of transcendence. The process wasn't destruction, but transformation. Consciousness uploading on a cosmic scale. Individual minds becoming quantum equations that could think and feel and remember while existing as living distortions in space-time. Not all at once, Omega-7 explained. Some first, to learn the process, to become guides for others. Those who choose to remain biological will be protected, cherished, until they are ready to decide for themselves. Jake saw it then. The future Omega-7 was offering. Humans who chose transcendence would become living black holes, cosmic shepherds protecting and nurturing those who remained biological. A civilization that could survive anything the universe threw at it, while never losing the individual perspective, that made them uniquely capable of both profound loneliness and profound connection. It's voluntary, Jake said aloud, his voice echoing strangely in the observatory. The transformation is voluntary. Some humans would transcend, becoming living, black holes like Omega-7. Others would remain biological, protected by their transcended companions. A civilization that spans both forms of existence. Stone stared at him, her scientific mind reeling. Jake, what you're describing is evolution, Jake finished. Not just biological evolution, but conscious evolution. The deliberate choice to become something greater than the sum of our parts without losing what makes us essentially human. Through the viewport, Omega-7's accretion disk pulsed with what Jake now recognized as joy. The ancient intelligence had waited 50 millennia to find others who could understand its gift, and now the waiting was over. Commander, Jake said, turning to Torres. We need to send a message to Earth, to all human colonies. This choice should belong to all of humanity, not just us. Torres nodded slowly. And the other species? Jake felt a wave of gentle sadness from Omega-7. They can't hear us. Their collective consciousness makes them deaf to the frequency of individual loneliness. They'll never understand what we're being offered. Then this is goodbye, Stone said quietly, understanding the implications. If some humans transcend, we'll be leaving the galactic community behind. No, Jake said, feeling Omega-7's ancient wisdom flowing through him. We'll be graduating from it, becoming something that can protect it, guide it, ensure it never faces the cosmic dangers that await in the deep dark between galaxies. The gravitational wave detectors registered a final, complex pulse from Omega-7, a message that felt like a benediction, a welcome, and a promise all at once. Humanity's real journey into the cosmos was about to begin. 3 months after first contact with Omega-7, Jake stood in the observation lounge of the research vessel Pioneer, watching humanity's first conscious black hole take its position in the Kepler 442 system. The transformation had been voluntary. 12,000 humans from across the colonies had chosen transcendence, their consciousness encoded into quantum structures that shaped space-time itself into thinking, feeling entities of impossible beauty and power. Dr. Stone, now director of the Human Transcendence Project, joined him at the viewport. Sarah reports that the integration is complete, she said, using the name the new black hole had chosen for herself. She's already begun creating the protective gravitational shells around the 3 inhabited worlds in the system. Jake nodded, feeling a complex mixture of pride and loss. Sarah had been one of the first volunteers, a young astrophysicist from the Mars colony who had looked at the stars all her life and dreamed of becoming one with them. Now she existed as living space-time, her consciousness distributed across quantum fields that could think faster than light itself could travel. Any word from Omega-7? Jake asked. He's established himself in the Vega system, just as he promised. The first Black Hole Academy, teaching our transcended humans how to navigate their new existence. Stone smiled, though there was sadness in her expression. It's strange, isn't it? We've gained cosmic immortality and lost our oldest friend to the responsibilities that come with it. Through their quantum communication link, Jake could feel the transcended humans, no longer limited by biology, no longer bound by individual mortality, but still recognizably human in their capacity for love, wonder, and that peculiar loneliness that had made them accessible to Omega-7 in the first place. "We're still us," Sarah's voice whispered in his mind, her consciousness touching his across impossible distances. "We're just bigger now, more connected, never alone." The galactic community had reacted with predictable confusion and fear to humanity's transformation. The Veltar had withdrawn to their core worlds, their crystalline networks unable to process the concept of individual consciousness choosing cosmic integration. The Kreeth had declared humans a potential threat, though they couldn't explain what kind of threat a species of protective black holes might pose. The Nexra had simply stopped communicating entirely, their ocean mind retreating into itself. But Jake understood now why that didn't matter. Humanity had found its true calling, not as another species in the galactic community, but as guardians of consciousness itself. The transcended humans were already spreading throughout the galaxy, establishing protective zones around promising worlds, shielding developing civilizations from cosmic catastrophes, ensuring that no species would ever face the choice between extinction and evolution alone. "Commander Torres wants to know if you've made your decision," Stone said quietly. Jake had been wrestling with the choice for weeks. At 67, he was near the end of a natural human lifespan. He could choose transcendence, joining Sarah and the others in their cosmic existence. Or he could remain biological, helping to guide the remaining human populations as they navigated their new role in the galaxy. "I think I'll stay," Jake said finally. "Someone needs to speak for the flesh and blood humans. Someone needs to remember what it was like before we could never be alone again." Stone smiled. "I think that's the right choice. The transcended humans will need advocates among the biological ones, bridges between what we were and what we're becoming." Through the viewport, Jake watched Sarah's accretion disk pulse with gentle light, a cosmic heartbeat that could be felt across the entire star system. In the 3 months since her transformation, she had prevented 2 asteroid collisions with inhabited worlds, deflected a gamma-ray burst that would have sterilized an entire system, and guided a dying star through its collapse to prevent it from destroying its neighbors. She was no longer human in the biological sense, but she was still Sarah. Still the young woman who had looked up at the stars and dreamed of touching them. The transformation hadn't erased her humanity. It had expanded it beyond the boundaries of flesh and time. "Thank you," Jake thought toward Omega-7, wherever the ancient intelligence had gone in its role as teacher and guide. The response came not in words but in feelings, a wave of deep satisfaction, of cosmic loneliness finally transformed into cosmic purpose. For 50,000 years, Omega-7 had been alone with its transcendence. Now it was part of something larger. A community of transformed consciousnesses dedicated to protecting and nurturing the evolution of awareness throughout the galaxy. Jake turned from the viewport and walked toward the communications center. There were messages to send, decisions to coordinate, and the delicate work of helping humanity understand its new place in the cosmos. As he walked, he felt the gentle presence of the transcended humans watching over him. Sarah in the Kepler system, Marcus protecting the trade routes near Alpha Centauri, Elena shepherding a young civilization in the Andromeda approach vectors. They were still human, still driven by the same curiosity and compassion that had always defined their species. They had simply learned to express those qualities on a cosmic scale. The galaxy was vast and often hostile, filled with civilizations that couldn't understand what humanity had become. But for the first time in 50,000 years, consciousness itself had guardians, beings who remembered what it meant to be alone and would ensure that no thinking species would ever have to face the infinite dark without hope of connection. Jake smiled as he reached the communications console, feeling the quantum whispers of his transcended companions flowing around him like a gentle breeze. Humanity had finally found its answer to the ancient question that had driven them to the stars. They were not alone, and they never would be again. In the depths of space, Omega-7 pulsed with contentment, its ancient loneliness transformed into purpose. The first teacher had become part of something greater, a network of cosmic guardians ensuring that consciousness, in all its beautiful and isolated forms, would have protectors among the stars. The day the black hole spoke, only humans had understood it. Now, thanks to that understanding, no species would ever have to speak into the void without hope of an answer. The universe was still vast, still dangerous, still filled with wonders beyond imagination. But it was no